Right, and once again, I'm talking to Nik Perring, who is a long-time writer friend of mine, though very much a virtual one, as we've never actually met physically, and while the lockdown's on, we probably never will do. But
I know it's getting harder and harder, isn't it?
yes, and indeed, most of the time, you appear to be when you're not in lockdown, you appear to be sticking in Instagram pictures of the latest train you're sat on, heading from.
I know. I never thought I'd see the day when I'd miss late trains, but any trains I'm missing at the moment. But it's great to be back. It
Yeah,
is to be on, and it's good to talk to you again.
yeah.
But
So
these are strange times.
they are. So we're talking about your life as a writer and the fact that you aren't, say, a full-time academic, or you don't have a full-time day job doing something else, and you're not a full-time journalist doing a bit of writing on the side, which is probably how most people operate.
Yeah,
But you are putting together a life and a living doing writing related stuff. I mean, I
that's
mean,
right.
I mean, the first sort of thing, obviously, is that nobody, except for a handful of authors, ever makes big money and can say that's it. I can live by my books. Um, Most people, well, not mainly most people, 99% of authors
Yeah.
can't do that. So what sort of things do you do that at the same time aren't in the grind so much that you can't actually get around to doing any writing?
I think I mean I'll start by saying I think like you say 99% of people don't make all their money through book sales, because it's really really difficult, especially with the kind of limited shelf space we've got with all the well the book chains going over this past 10
Yeah.
years or so. There literally isn't the shelf space to stock the product,
Mm.
which the book is when we kind of boil it down to to the kind of nub of what we're trying to sell. But I don't think I'd want to make all of my money just through writing books, because I think for me, I think I love writing. I love making stuff up. I love moving people. I love people enjoying my work or being heartbroken by it, or all the good things, or whatever. But I think in order to write those, you kind of have to live as well.
Mm.
Uh, and we said the other day, you saying, what do I do between books, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
Mm.
And one of the things I was going to say is we live. We experience life stories, our lives interrupted by something unusual, which I got from Margaret Atwood. I think that's a lovely way of
Mm.
describing stories, are their lives interrupted. And we got to go out and see them. We've got to kind of grow our own, in order to have something to write about. I don't think there's that much to be said for just living in your head.
Mm.
Um, but what do I do when I'm not writing books? Most of my time over the past kind of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years especially, but going back to 2005, I think, has been teaching people how to write books and stories and poems and stuff like that. So
Mm.
while I never call myself a teacher because I don't have the stamina to do that day in, day out, I don't know what the word is, a facilitator, an educator, a
Mm.
helper. So I'm lucky in that there's loads of organisations I've worked for. Um, Hive, South Yorkshire, around Sheffield and Barnsley and Doncaster and Rotherham and those sort of places. We work with 14 to 19-year-olds chiefly, which is brilliant. I think I say this a lot. Kind of my favourite bit of the job a lot of the time is hearing other people's take on life and how they see things and how they express it. And all I'm really doing is giving them a kind of framework to do that and the confidence to put down what they think about stuff, whatever that stuff is,
Mm.
onto paper. And that feeds into my own experiences as well, because I'll see something on a train on the way back that I wouldn't have seen had I not gone to, Barnsley on a
Yeah.
on a Monday evening or something like that. And through that, it's like the old cliche, isn't it? When you work with anybody, especially young people, it's so rewarding.
Mm.
But it really, really is. And seeing somebody who may not have had the confidence to write anything down at all, write something down, we're not talking about literary excellence all the time, although we've done great with Hive. We've had loads of, winners of really important competitions. We had Ledbury winners, we had New Writing North, we had a BBC Young Writer of the Year last year. So all these terrific things, but it's not really about the literary excellence side of it as much as giving people the opportunity to be confident in saying what they think about stuff. So I do stuff, say with Hive, I'm a writer in residence at a couple of high schools, one in Leeds, one in Scunthorpe for First Story. I've taught at the BBC, I've taught in primary schools, colleges, universities. I'm writer in residence for Sheffield's Year of Reading, so like the whole city's literary provision is kind of my responsibility, which is interesting because we can't get out and do it. So I've been spending the past 7 weeks transferring a ton of stuff that I would have been doing in front of people online, into some sort of digital format. And I think, there's a lot to be said for that. That said, there's probably a lot to be said for having a job that's got absolutely nothing to do with writing at all. I still think you can go out there and have fun and live your life and do good things without that part of your brain being engaged. Which you'll find, I'm sure, if you're writing something as a journalist that's got absolutely bugger all to do with what you write as a fiction writer or something like that, it almost gives that side of the brain time off to percolate stuff and to subconsciously find solutions. But I do feel really, really lucky that I'm able to work with words in some way, even if they're not my own.
Yeah. And when it comes to your own creative writing, how does that fit into the sort of your schedule? Do you have, Wednesdays I stay at home and I do my own writing, or do you set away time for it? Or obviously you got your travelling on trains and endless delays, so there's always
There are opportunities now. I used to be the most, what's the word, regimented writer. Everything has to be in a certain place or a certain time, with no sound around me, nothing to interrupt me, no barking dogs or people mowing the lawns or anything like that. And I was actually having this conversation with somebody yesterday about the idea of routine and habit forming. And I think habits are useful because they keep that muscle flexed, even if creative writing muscle or a running muscle. If you're running, that routine absolutely helps. But I do feel as well, the kind of older I'm getting and the more I know what works for me, is that you have to find out what works for you. And if you say, I will write between the hours of 8 in the morning and 10 o'clock of a Sunday or whatever, and you don't do it, you've failed. And I think it's a really, really psychologically a difficult thing to get over, and it's not going to help you. So I think my point, with writing, especially something longer, is to not put that any extra pressure that you don't need on yourself. I just finished a draft of like the 8th draft of what I hope will be my next book, and I would say 70% of that was written either on train journeys or in train station waiting rooms whilst I've been waiting for delayed trains. Which is interesting because a lot of the train journeys I take are like, I don't know, 40 minutes long or an hour long. And 40 minutes seems to be around about the optimum time for writing something without thinking too much about it, because I think that's where a lot of writers or people trying to get into writing fail. They think it's more complicated than it is, and often the best way of writing is just get out whatever's in your head, get it down onto the page or onto the computer. But that 40-minute slot seems to be kind of optimum for having this the momentum and the drive without losing focus. And I've been trying to build that in, when I come back. Obviously, I've got an office, which I'm in here, I'll come back from wherever I've been and do a little bit more sometimes. And I'm thinking, actually, about 40 minutes to an hour, you can get a lot done. If you can do 1,200 words, if you're not censoring yourself as you go. And if you do that, a few times a week, those words add up. If you do 1,000 words over 5 days, that's 5,000 words. In a month, it doesn't take a genius mathematician to think in 2 or 3 months you're well on your way to a novel.
Yes, I think that's one of the things people do make a mistake on that, today is my writing day and I will be there, crack of
Yeah.
dawn. But of course, life's not like that, so you can't do it. And you do wonder whether the ritual gets in
Yeah.
the way of doing it. Is a bit like, some writers I know are very fussy about what they write on and how they write and everything else. Whereas, I've got scruffy notebooks and backs of post-it notes and bits and pieces here and there, and then I do it on a WP. But
Yes.
I don't have a writing pen or anything like that, which
I used to. It's interesting to see actually how my process has kind of evolved or devolved over the years. I used to have to write in a specific sort of notebook. I always had Moleskine or Leuchtturm are fantastic as well, with a Pelican fountain pen with a specific sort of ink, and that limits you. Like you say, it becomes more about the ritual and what bloody pen you're using
yeah,
than it's the words. And I used to say with notebooks, they can't have anything on the cover. They can't have a graphic on the cover or anything like that, because that'll affect what I'm writing, because
yeah,
I'm very important and all this kind of nonsense. And now I think one of the big turning points in a weird way was I got an iPad.
hmm
I got a reconditioned iPad for because they were cheaper.
yeah,
With a keyboard, because I could take it around. The idea was I'd use that for teaching. If I got videos to show people, or of people reading stuff, I'd use that. But I thought actually this is compact enough to take on a train,
mm,
and I can do this. The last the book, but hopefully will be the book that I finished. I've been to London to a presentation of something that I judged, and I'd written a little bit in a cafe because I had a half an hour to spare before I was doing whatever I was doing, and I thought I've just got this idea and I'll just get down a page or two. And then there's a delay at Stoke Station. I was going to Derby of all places to mentor somebody, and I did that 40-minute thing
yeah,
because I had it with me, and I might not have taken my fountain pen before with me, or for fear of it leaking or losing it or whatever. But the fact that I had that thing with me, and it didn't matter what kind of what medium I was putting it down on, it was just there,
mm,
helped. And I remember very, very clearly on the way back on the train, I thought, no, I've got this. This is a thing. It feels like I got a live one. So I wrote again, and in 2 days I've probably done 3 or 4 thousand words on it, which is enough for you to go, this is workable. There's enough
yeah,
with this. There's enough meat on it to want to continue. And I've done it in, like, I don't know, 2 40-minute bursts or
mm,
3 minutes bursts or something like that. At a time where normally I'd have just been sat looking out the window or listening to music or reading a book myself.
mm,
Um, so I think the idea of any sort of strategy with it, or any sort of I don't know, clinical, strategic way of writing. The key is find out what works for you, and don't be a slave to what you think works, because other things might as well. And the
yeah,
cool thing with writing is you can always cross stuff out. You can
mm,
delete stuff if it's rubbish, and we all write rubbish.
mm,
I know I do, certainly. Nobody's testing you on it. You can put a pen through it.
mm,
You can push delete. You can just save it for later and never come back to it ever again. But if you don't try that in some way, you'll never know what you might want to go on to
mm,
afterwards.
mm. What about we're very much talking about the creative writing process. When you're playing around with ideas, do you have a way of doing that? Again, you see people, with big whiteboards and post-it notes and stickers and things, and
I wish I had the discipline to have that. It would be useful. I really, really think, especially in something longer, with timelines and chronology,
yeah,
you want to make sure that things fit. But I think, again, it depends on the individual writer. I can only talk about it from my experience. I do have a notebook with me, which I'll write ideas down. I'll put it on my phone, use Evernote or something like that. Um, I think the ones I choose to write are the ones that I'm either terrified of losing, because I do think especially with short stories, which is
mm,
what I'm known for. My books are short story collections. You kind of ride a wave of inspiration. It's a little bit like surfing. Not that I've ever surfed in my life, but it's how I imagine it to. It's like you've got to get it once it's there. You got to jump on it, and you got to ride it until it finishes. and then that's the kind of document, and then you go back and you work at it really, really hard and make it into something better. I think with something longer, I make a note, sort of chapter by chapter, of what has happened, because again, you need to make sure that things match and that people have things in the right order and all those kind of things. And within that, there will be ideas for what's going to happen next, obviously. And then bits that I might want to address, they all go in there, or things that I might want to include, or things I'm worried about. But that's just I've got it here. Let's have a look. I don't know. It's not even a quarter full. Because I think a lot of it, you just have to trust yourself. And if you put something down there on paper, it's there for you to find.
Yes.
I think you've got to work out the best way of accessing that information for yourself, be it on a big whiteboard or a big chalkboard or something on your wall, or like a program like Scrivener, however you say that, or Evernote, or Pages or whatever. But writing isn't as complicated as people think. It's a narrative, which usually means things happen in a logical order. It's cause and effect, and you've got to trust yourself. One, that you know the story better than anybody else anyway, because you're writing it. But two, that you can come back to it. And I think with what I've been doing at the moment, I think it probably takes 5 drafts in order to know your story properly, because there's so much that you forget that you might have written 2 months ago. And it's like, oh God, yes, I forgot about that. He did have a daughter. He's still waiting for him, 3 weeks on.
Yes.
But yeah, I think having some way to access that sort of information is important, but also trusting yourself. And unless you're on deadline, the beauty is that nobody's waiting for anything for you. So you can take as long as you want, as long as you need, to make sure that whatever it is that you're writing is right.
Yeah. And you were mentioning drafts, and you just said, 4th or 5th draft, and earlier you said you'd just done the 8th draft.
Yep.
That again seems to be a failing many people have, that they do the one version and more or less, check it for typos and that's it. Whereas, I've always thought, you put it away for a while, then you come back to it again, and then you look at it and you think, oh my God, this is gibberish or whatever. But it's the endless working. But do you work on the basis of getting it all down as fast as in one go, rather than the self-editing all the time, where there's always a danger that you never get past page 1 because you're still trying to correct your opening sentence?
Yeah, absolutely. Get as much down as you can without thinking about it too much, I think, is my kind of mantra. Because like I said, you can go back and fix it. That's the point of writing. The first, I think it was Neil Gaiman said this, and I really, it stuck with me. Terry Pratchett, it might have been, actually, that the first draft is you telling yourself the story. And that's important. And the point is, it might be good. I've written loads of good first drafts, but good ain't good enough. You want to be brilliant. And I think I love the idea of putting away from it, because the thing is, if you show that to somebody, if what you want to happen is for that book or story or poem or whatever it is to be published, you got to remember that whoever reads that will not be as excited about it as you are when you're writing it. Because it's your thing, and it's this super exciting thing. You're making characters, you're making art, you're making this brilliant world. When you show that to somebody, they come to it absolutely cold as an objective reader, and you've got to try and put yourself in that sort of position. It's difficult when it's your own stuff. Having time away from it absolutely helps, and you also get a better sense of what you've written rather than what you think you've written. And there's absolutely a process to go through with that, and time is a massive part of that. I really, really, really believe that. But yeah, I mean, when you're writing it, it doesn't matter as long as you get it down. And even if you think what you're writing might be a little bit rubbish, you're in control. You can change it. I wouldn't change it at the time, because I think you'll never get anywhere. You never finish chapter 1, like you say. But what might happen, as has happened to me, is you might get a few thousand words and think, I'm not sure where this is going. and then you come to a point where it's like, no, actually, this is where the story starts. All I was doing before was writing myself into it. I was warming up.
Yeah.
I was getting myself prepared for it. No, this is where the story starts. So you can jettison a
Yes.
few thousands, get rid of those, because that's where you are. That's where the story starts. But you only know that when you finished it.
Yes.
So unless you trust your internal barometer, like your fiction quality barometer, and kind of, if you think it's generally rubbish or it's not going to go anywhere, then it's all right to give up on it and try something different. But again, I'd always suggest giving it a fair crack of the whip and just seeing where it goes, because the idea that you've had that's made you want to start writing it is obviously a good one. 95% of the time. So trying it, or maybe looking at it with different eyes and saying, maybe I need to look at it from a different angle, and am I telling it in the right way or not? But again, you only know that once you sort of, I wouldn't say once you finish, actually, maybe once you've started considerably. Yeah, I think that's what I think.
Yeah. 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 Certainly for longer stuff, I've just finished a full-length novel, and
Congratulations, it's a massive undertaking,
it
isn't it?
is, it is, and I'm just about to start trying to pitch it to people, but um, it was one where I tried it before and it just had fatal
Really?
flaws in it. The the world you were creating just didn't hang together. There was, this
Yeah,
idea of the suspension of disbelief that
yeah,
you use. Um, it just wasn't holding together, and it wasn't convincing me. So it's certainly not going to convince anybody else. So it sort of went away, and then it came back again, and went away and came back again. But about halfway through it, I was thinking, "Cool, it's developing. The characters are coming out, and
it's a real joy when that happens.
yeah,
And I think it's a strange one, because I don't think when we're right, I'm kind of contradicting myself. I don't think when we're right, we ever 100% believe it's going to be brilliant and amazing and change the world and all that kind of stuff. There's obviously an inner belief that the idea is good, and we do it because we enjoy doing it, because you wouldn't do everything,
yeah,
you spend years doing it or months doing it if you didn't enjoy it. But it happens every now and then, I think, where you're finishing something, or you're going back through something that you've written, and you go, do you know what? This is good. This is all right. And I think that confidence in it goes a long way as well. Once you know that you've created something that's believable, and again, this is why having the space helps, because you go back to it a little bit colder with a bit more objectivity, and you kind of. I did this. I love the experience of the day when when I'm pretty sure it's done, I read it aloud, and then when I'm pretty sure that's done, I record myself reading it aloud so I can listen to it
right,
in my phones when I go out. So again, it's just a different. You're getting it from a different angle, and you will notice things in terms of rhythm or consistency with that, because with the best will in the world, if you're editing a novel, you can only do it in reasonably short kind of batches of time. So you'll notice something if you got a log of it or a backlog of it, something that you maybe edited 3 days ago feeding into what you edited the day before, and thinking, actually, no, that doesn't make sense because she's just said that, or she said it in the wrong order. So you pick up those bits, but also you get those bits that are unexpected, and you laugh at them if they're funny, and that's a really good. God, I made myself laugh. That clearly works.
yeah,
Or I was coming to the end of it, and I was crying. The last chapter or two, because it genuinely moved me, and that's not like kind of blow my own trumpet sort of thing. That's one of those moments where it's like that's passed a test. I have been away from it from a little bit, and I'm listening to it with different eyes or ears, however we want to say it, and I am being affected. And that's the point of writing. You want to affect people. You want to make them gasp in disbelief or cry their hearts out, or any other cliches I can think of. But if you're doing that to yourself while being removed from it and not in this kind of riding that wave of excitement, then that's a big thing. And writing takes a long time to get things right. It's nobody ever said it was going to be quick or easy. And I edit a lot as part of what I do when I'm not writing, and I do get people sending me things saying, I think it's almost right. With this idea that you'll pick up and make it like wave a magic wand and make it brilliant, and the idea that somebody else is responsible for that is a bit weird. And I would always say to those people, well, you're going to pay me for it anyway. Take another few weeks, get it the best shape you can, because you want to be putting your best stuff forward, no matter who it is. If I'm going to work on something, I want to work on the best to make that better, rather than work on something that wasn't quite as good and make it as good as when you'd have handed it to me to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in that case, so, and the way that you do that, like I say, is by taking your time. And it's so hard because when you do finish something, it's like you're so excited by this thing, you finished it. That's psychologically it works. You've achieved something. And then curbing your own enthusiasms is really, really difficult because you want to share it. That's why we write, really, I think. Unless it's diary or something like that, 90% of the time is so other people can have that experience, or tell you how great it is, and you want that reaction. So I think learning to curb that a little bit, or having a trusted reader who will be objective and honest with you, even if it's not what you want to hear,
Yes.
is important as well.
Yes. The dreaded, my mum thinks it's a great book, or my mum thinks this is a great story. Why don't you? Well,
Exactly. And your mum will be really pleased that you finished something. A friend would be, I'd be really, really pleased if anybody finished something. But that isn't, I would always argue, I think it's always dangerous asking for opinions because people give you them whether they've got one or not.
yeah.
And they'll try and validate the reason that you've asked them to do it by giving you something, even though it might not be anything that they mean particularly. I remember when I first started writing, I was part of a writing group online on Right Words, going way, way back to the mid 2000s, and people used to put the work up for critique as I did as well. And looking back on it, as I did a few years ago, most of my critique started, I love your pace. I love your pace in this thing. And it doesn't really mean anything. And I don't even know what I thought I meant when I was saying it, other than I thought I was being useful or helpful or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was.
Yeah.
But that's not to say it didn't help. Everybody likes somebody saying that they liked what they did. I'm just not sure if it was critically useful, you know. But I was trying. I was always a trier.
What about poetry? Because you mentioned that earlier, and that you do that, and that you also um, facilitate, tutor,
Yeah.
do that. Because there are people who take the view, that poetry is one thing and writing fiction is something else, and never the two will part. Yet there's an awful lot of others who take the view, well, they're all part of the writing thing, and of course, if you're a fiction writer, you also write poetry, or even if you're a non-fiction writer, you might even do poetry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a great poet myself. I have had a couple of poems published many, many years ago, but I wouldn't claim to be a poet. I know plenty of really great poets who I think it'd probably be insulting to say that I was on their level. I'm not. But all writing's valid, and I know loads of people who are good at both.
Hmm.
And I've certainly helped young people at school, showing them that they are actually a poet without them knowing it by the way that stuff's laid out.
Hmm.
They have like written it as a paragraph, and me putting it onto different lines with a bit of punctuation chucked in there, it's suddenly a poem.
Hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful moment when people see what they've done. It's
Hmm.
you kind of clearing away the dust from it and showing what's underneath it. But no, I think. What is the difference between poetry and short fiction, or poetry and prose?
Hmm.
Yeah, they're ever changing boundaries with it. I think whatever you write, I can't remember who said it, but there's no way of learning how to write a short story. I think they were talking about.
Yeah.
There's only a way to learn to write that particular one that you're trying to write. So whatever you're writing, it might be a poem in the end. I don't think it's massively useful to set out right from the off and say, right, I am going to write this, and it's going to be this, that. Because again, going back to what I was saying about this kind of rigid um, regimen for writing, is you set yourself up to fail. If
Hmm.
you say I'm going to write myself 100,000 word horror story and it ends up 90,863, to a point, you failed. So I think
Yeah.
trusting your instincts and just going with what you think, or what feels right,
Yes.
is the way to go with it. And don't let anybody tell you what is and what isn't poetry. or prose or whatever. I guess it's your responsibility when you want to publish it to look into who publishes that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But you know, because you edited, didn't you yourself, Ink, Sweat and Tears, all those places.
Yeah.
I don't think an editor knows what they want until they see it.
Yeah. 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 Mm. Um, because over here in the UK, we're obviously still in for semi-lockdown, if not the strict lockdown. For writers or people who are wanting to write and are in lockdown, what's the sort of tips of how to survive and how to do it? Obviously, not just lock yourself in front of your word processor from rising of the sun to the setting thereof, but
I think, if you want to write,
yeah,
start something. Um, Writing's all about momentum, and you don't get any momentum unless you start. My tips for writing are quite basic. I talk about this all the time when I'm facilitating or teaching or whatever you want to call it. Is that writing isn't as complicated as you think it is a lot of the time. It isn't an academic pursuit unless you want it to be. Authors are people. We're all just people, and we tell stories. Everybody knows how to tell a story because everybody tells stories every single day of their lives. Talking about what's happened in lockdown, people will say, I did this today, I did that today, or I went out today, I saw these people doing this, and she did that, and he said that, and then it finished. That's a story. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that. I would always say, find something, make something unusual happen to somebody. That's always a great start. Like Margaret Atwood said before, like I said before, sorry, stories are lives interrupted. So it's no good talking about people sitting opposite each other eating the beans on toast. Let's have a UFO land outside the window while they're eating the beans on toast. Let's zombies knocking at the door. Let's have an important letter coming through telling somebody that they've inherited a gazillion pounds. Make something unusual happen to normal people, because people always empathise with people that they can see themselves in. And if they think that they could be in that situation with zombies at the door or UFOs coming down or whatever, they're more likely to buy into it. Nobody's seen Star Wars without thinking how cool it would be to hold a lightsaber. Nobody's seen Harry Potter without thinking how cool it would be to be able to cast a spell. That's what you want to be doing.
yeah,
I think in terms of actually writing it, I've always said, don't try and sound like a writer, because that's what most people do when they start. They try and sound like a writer. And when you do that, you just sound like somebody trying to sound like a writer. You use all these kind of long words and complicated sentences. And what you do with that is you're hiding your ideas behind these long words and sentences, preambulating betwixt twisted boughs beneath the palm green umbra. Just say a man walked past some trees.
yes,
Use language you would use to your friends, to your family. Because storytelling should be clear and clean. We should understand the story and be able to see it in order to appreciate it. So don't worry too much. Set aside 20 minutes, and see how far you can go with 20 minutes. If you don't fill it, that's fine. You can always do something later. You'll probably find, though, if you're writing something that you like, you want to go over those 20 minutes. There's a great piece of advice. I only saw this the other day, and I can't remember who gave it, though. Always finish when you know what the next sentence is going to be, but don't write it. Come back to it tomorrow, because then it's easier to get back into the that kind of momentum again. But mostly
never thought of that. That's good.
No, I hadn't. In 15, 16 years of doing it,
Yeah,
I do it sort of, because I like to know where I'm going to go with it. But if you know what the next sentence is, just don't write it, or write it on a separate piece of paper.
yeah.
And leave it somewhere. But mostly, have fun. Don't be scared by your ideas. Silly ideas work brilliantly. I say this a lot when I'm teaching the younger ones, that who'd have thought that the idea of a magic piece of furniture would be a great story, until you realise that it's a wardrobe, and at the back of the wardrobe you've got Narnia. Who would have thought it'd be a great idea to have a boy stuck on a boat with a tiger? Imagine the pitch meeting for Life of Pi. They think, so he's on his own with a tiger and they're stranded. Is it the shortest story ever? Chapter 2, the tiger burps and the boy's nowhere to be seen because tigers eat people, But from this crazy, crazy, ridiculous, silly idea, you've actually got a really, really affecting book, film, whatever it is. So we've had some great stories, that I've helped. But when I've been in the room with people writing, people sneezing hypnotic silly string instead of snot, and people waking up with different faces and all that kind of stuff. But if you're coming up with ideas like that and you have this arresting first line of this weird image, people buy into it because they go, all right, that sounds ridiculous, convince me. That sounds like nonsense, but I'm still interested. There's some of my stories, somebody being born half person, half shark. I like the idea of somebody going, bollocks, that makes no sense at all. Prove me wrong. And then exploring that, you're already committed to it because it's your idea, and you hopefully enjoyed it. I think that's the best. I think they're the best. They're my sort of top tips. So enjoy what you're writing. Don't be scared by your ideas. And tell the story cleanly with language that you'd use to your mates or to your kids or to your mum or your dad or your dog or your cat, whoever it is you talk to.
Yourself these days, yes.
I've stopped talking to myself and getting into too many arguments, as my granddad used to say.
Nick, that was brilliant. Right, once again, many thanks for your time, and
Charles, always a pleasure. And I do hope everybody's all right out there. I hope everybody's coping. And this might be one way to help. Write a diary. Go all peeps on it. If you're getting frustrated, write stuff down. I think there's a validity to that, writing. It's like the emails that you never send, those letters of complaints to your friends that you're really pissed off with that you never send. It's good therapy and it gets stuff out.
Brilliant. Right. Once again, thanks very much, Nick.
Always a pleasure, Charles. Thank you very much.